武士道とは死ぬことと見つけたり、修羅道とは倒すことと見つけたり、我
Samurai Showdown made its long-awaited return with 2019's Samurai Showdown. Now in 2021, we get the Series X and S update with Samurai Showdown Special Edition. Does it stand out in a crowded genre? Let's find out. This is our review of Samurai Showdown Special Edition. Many people outside the fighting game community won't know this, but Samurai Showdown, also known as Samurai Spirits in Japan, aka Samsho, is almost just as old as other classic fighting game franchises. While it may not have the name and brand power of Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat or even King of Fighters, it has always been a revered series which differentiated itself due to taking the weapon-based combat route. While Soul Calibur has since stolen much of the weapon-based combat limelight, Samurai Showdown remained fairly consistent in its convictions before taking a hiatus after the less than stellar 2008 release, Samurai Showdown Sen. But in 2019, SNK brought the franchise back with a prequel reboot of sorts, with the aptly named Samurai Showdown. But in March this year, the 2019 release got a Series X and S update with somewhat of a rebrand, if you will, named Samurai Showdown Special Edition. It should be worth mentioning, the Special Edition of Samurai Showdown is a physical release only, which includes the Season 1 pass. Digitally, you can only buy the standard base game, which then received a Series X and S Smart Delivery update. As I alluded to earlier, Samsho was always unique in its genre, particularly back in 1993 when it released, even amongst its cousins within the SNK stable of fighters, mostly due to its weapon-based combat. But how does it fare in 2021 in a genre that is equally as crowded, if not more so? Surprisingly well, I must say. In sticking vehemently to its roots, Samsho manages to still differentiate itself from other fighters on the market by being a far more methodical, strategic and defensively minded fighting game. I have to admit up front, I haven't played a Samurai Showdown game since the original back in '93 in the arcades. So this was an adjustment for me, coming from mostly playing Street Fighter V and Killer Instinct. I had to relearn a lot of the game and really force myself to stop trying to play the game like I do Street Fighter and Killer Instinct. While most fighters these days have a focus on fluid, combo-heavy combat, Samsho eschews that trend by slowing right down and forcing a more tactical battle of wits between yourself and your opponent. Having played so many fighting games between 1993 and now, I couldn't help but feel like Samsho, while unique, has all these various elements from different fighters. Or should I say, almost elements. Now, what do I mean by that? Allow me to explain. As an example, Samurai Showdown is quite violent and bloody. You can even dismember your opponent, yet it doesn't go all the way in the same way Mortal Kombat does. As strange as this sounds, the gore is more subtle. There's also an underlying counter system, but again, it's more dialed back as opposed to being as in-depth and in-your-face as Killer Instinct's counter system. The rage system also makes its return, which was from the original game, a meter that builds as you get hit. Effectively, it's an I'm getting pissed off meter. And when unleashed, your character has a rage explosion that knocks your opponent back. All your attacks deal extra damage, and time stops around you. While no longer a new feature per se, many fighters have since implemented a similar system, it's a welcome return that adds an extra layer to an already very methodical combat system. I also appreciated the game's focus on a streamlined set of moves and special attacks. If you look up the command list of almost any other fighting game these days, you'll be bombarded with a staggering array of specials, command moves, supers, etc, etc. Samsho strips all that back, but still almost demands you learn all its moves and systems thoroughly, as it simply won't allow you to get away with button mashing like so many other fighters do. I encourage anyone who plays run through the tutorial. It's quick and quite simple, and even take part in some practice. The tutorial/practice mode also has a really neat throwback to the original game where you have a referee overseeing the fight. Samurai Showdown is a game set in 18th century Japan, and this is a theme that is intrinsically linked into every piece that makes up the game, from the watercolour brushstrokes that permeate through the game's menu screens, down to the Japanese narrator who calls out the title in its Japanese name, Samurai Spirits, despite Samurai Showdown being the title you see on screen. The game is beautiful and on the Series X and S runs at a ridiculously smooth 120 frames per second, which one could argue meshes well with the game's flowing aesthetic. I will say that it does share some visual elements with Street Fighter IV, a game which also adopted the almost cel-shaded hand-drawn visual style with ink trails and a light sketchwork that makes up part of each character's render. It looks stunning and is a real showcase of the sort of variety Unreal Engine 4 can pull off. Even the backdrops are clean, free of visual clutter, and show a variety of environments despite the limitation of being set in just one country. In keeping with the setting and period of the game, the music and audio also evokes the same feelings of tranquility that are synonymous with Japanese themes in most media. Now, the only real letdown of the package, and for many this might be a little bit of a deal breaker, is the lack of modes and the depth of the modes available. In this area, Samurai Showdown sticks a little too much to its arcade roots, offering very little outside the basics. You have story mode, which is your very minimal cutscene, intro, bunch of battles, end in a boss fight, and another cutscene affair. If you're looking for something on the level of Mortal Kombat, you're not going to find it here. You also have practice, which speaks for itself, battle mode, which contains your standard local PvP, PvC matches, survival and time trial modes. Although it should be pointed out, the battle menu does contain one mode which I personally hadn't seen in a fighter before, which was Gauntlet mode. Although really it's just a spin on survival, except you simply have to beat every character in the game. There was also the Dojo, which is the asynchronous online battle mode, in other words, ghost battles. Similar to Killer Instinct Shadow mode, the game will learn your fighting style and you can either fight against your own ghost or other people's ghosts. The only issue is the ghosts don't seem to fight as well as I've experienced in other games, and most just repeat the same 2 or 3 moves over and over. Unfortunately, I couldn't get into an online match no matter how long I waited. Now, I don't know whether to chalk that up to my time zone not aligning with other people around the world just not being awake and playing, or the game's online scene just being flat out dead. Either way, I didn't get a chance to put it through its paces online to see whether it held up against the gold standard in Killer Instinct. Now, in isolation, this lack of depth in the game's modes isn't a huge issue, but when combined with the game's asking price, and for Australia that's $89.95 for a 2019 release, it might be a bitter pill to swallow. If you can look past the scarcity of modes and the anemic nature of the ones on offer, Samurai Showdown Special Edition is a fantastic return of a beloved fighting game franchise. It's a refreshing option for those who might want a break or a palate cleanser from the combo-heavy and more bombastic fighting games that are more prevalent in the scene today. Visually stunning and yet another showcase for the Xbox series of consoles' ability to play games at 120 frames per second. But if the price point is a touch steep for what's on offer here, I'd still recommend it on sale for fans of the genre. Samurai Showdown diehards in particular won't be disappointed. And as always, if you like our stuff, please like, subscribe, follow us on our socials, and if you don't mind sparing a coffee a month, support us on Patreon, and of course be sure to visit XboxEra.com for more. Ciao for now.